everyone. How are you doing today? Thank you for joining me. This is our fourth installment this month talking about um, evidence to support your VA disability claims. That's what I'm focusing on this month. If y'all don't know me, I'm Tara. I'm the lead Nexus provider with Telemedica. And each month we try to bring you some helpful, useful information from the Nexus team to help you either understand concepts medically about your disability claims or understand our process at Telemedica. Just some helpful tips each month. And so this month we're going live each week to talk about evidence and just letting people sign on. So I'll give you a quick recap. The past 3 weeks, what we talked about were DBQs, nexus letters, and rebuttal letters. So check out the replay if you've missed them. This week, we're focusing on the medical chart review and how it can help your claim. We'll discuss hidden items in the chart and support documents that can point to a service connection if you're not sure, and how Telemedica's chart review can strengthen your claim. So I wanted to start with a little bit about the process. So when you sign up for Telemedica, you're prompted to upload some key documents for the provider's review. And some people may really already understand the value and the benefit of adding these specific documents for the provider to have in review. And some of you may not really know why we're asking for them. So I'm going to go through a lot of these documents today. So the documents that we ask you to upload for review are your DD-214, your e-benefits screenshot, any denial letters that you may have for a requested condition, and medical records. And the reason we ask for them, it's not only to help us identify if there is a connection, if we can support your claim with a compelling nexus letter or DBQ, but there's also bits of useful information in those documents to help us include in your and highlight in your letter or in your DBQ to strengthen your claim. So I'm going to go through why we ask for these specific documents and what I look for in some specific examples as to what may be there that you may not be aware of to help your claim. So starting with DD-214, of course, this gives us your demographic information, your MOS or your job duty. I'm Army, so I call it MOS. So your job duty, your dates of service, any awards, and some information about some deployment periods of active service that you've had. These can give us clues into a lot of different types of connections. The easiest one to understand is if you qualify for a presumptive period, such as Gulf War, Agent Orange. Some of those specific presumptive claims can be easily identified if you qualify from a DD-214, helping us quickly and easily get through your records. It's also helpful for trying to make an argument direct to service. I use these specifically for things like orthopedic complaints because a lot of times we have veterans who just don't go to sick call. They don't want to be held back in their career. They were trained and brought up in their military system to not go to the doctor. And so oftentimes a lot of these folks will have significant orthopedic complaints early on in life, but they don't have enough records to support that connection. Even though we believe they're connected and you believe they're connected, we have to prove it. And so we have to go about unusual ways to prove that connection. And so one way I use a DD-214 in that is, say, for instance, you're trying to connect your knees. You have severe arthritis in your knees. You're young. There's no other reason for it, but you didn't really get seen too much in service. How do we support that? Well, if your DD-214 says that you were infantry versus a desk clerk, then of course I have a little bit more information to go off of that you may not have thought to tell us. Hey, your DD-214 job duty tells me a lot about about what your requirements were. And then we can dig through some of those job duties and descriptions that's published by the military as what your requirements are and what it is expected of you, how much heavy lifting you needed to do on a regular basis, all the way down to if you're a paratrooper or any other specific job, mechanic working on a ship. I've done some cases with that. We'll talk a little bit about a case like that we've worked on here shortly towards the end of this broadcast. But we use that information to try to piece together the picture of the puzzle. And so you may not think of some of these little details that may be helpful. It may have slipped your mind, or you just may not know that they're helpful information. So I use that information from a DD 214. The next item that we ask for, and we seem to struggle sometimes to get this information, is your e-benefits screenshot or image. Now, this is a quick and easy 1 to 3 page document that has all of your service connected conditions, exactly how the VA has rated them, at what percentage. I know it's not always 100% accurate, and so sometimes we need to ask for additional documents like your award letter, but it gives us that quick snapshot picture to give us that overall view of your case and your situation, as well as your health. Because if you have one service connected condition versus 10, it's going to give us a little bit of a different picture. Just like if we were looking at your doctor's records at the problem list, most medical providers are trained in a specific way of looking at records. And so these quick snapshot overview items like an e-benefits are very helpful for us to get the big picture really quick and fast so that we can narrow down in on exactly what we're looking at, or if we can see what we need to be looking for. It helps us sort of direct from the bigger picture down to the details. So that e-benefits can be a little bit tricky or difficult for some people to get. And so it's different than what people think, and they're uploading this disability letter that notifies us of the total percentage that they're service connected. And that's not helpful. What we need is the breakdown of each condition. And the reason we need that is if you, for instance, are trying to connect a condition to your mental health condition, if you call it PTSD, your official diagnosis might be depression and anxiety. That's a very different argument than PTSD. And I know it seems like small little details, but it's huge when it comes to VA disability claims, because if you receive a letter from us saying that you're connecting it to PTSD, and you're not service connected for PTSD, you're service connected for depression and anxiety, even if it is related to a traumatic event in service, the VA is going to kick that back and deny it because you're not service connected for the right thing that we're talking about. So it really makes a difference how we're writing these letters if we're able to get all of the correct information accurately from your files. So what do you do if we have difficulty? So there's a couple of options. The next best option is you can call the VA. There's a 1-800 number. It's 1-800-827-1000. And if you call that number, you can ask them to email you your copy of your breakdown of the disability of your service-connected conditions. That is the next best option. Last option, if none of that works or you are unable to do that, uploading your award letter will be helpful. The reason we don't recommend that as your first choice is because there's usually 10 to 20 pages for each award letter. And there's different pieces of that award letter that may be helpful to us. And if we're trying to get big picture overall snapshot of what's going on in your situation, it's going to be much more difficult for the provider to actually assess that if they're looking through 10 to 20 pages for one single condition and trying to piece that together in their mind. So another reason why we like that big overall picture is, for instance, using an example of your knees. So if you're telling us that your service-connected condition of your knees causes you to limp, and then sometime later your back starts to hurt and you have a significant back condition, but no injury to explain that pain, that we would be looking to see if that connection is supported in the medical records. But if we see on your e-benefits that you're also connected for your hip or your ankle, we would also pay a little extra attention to those records to see if there's anything hidden in those records that really point to those other items contributing to your service connect to your request, your back condition. And in addition to that, the wording, I mentioned earlier about the wording on the e-benefits. The wording, the way that the VA service connects you can be different. We don't expect you to be a medical expert. If your knee hurts and you tell us it's my knee, that's the problem, we don't have the expectation that you tell us it's an ACL injury versus arthritis, but those are also two very different letters that we're going to be writing. So it is very, very important right on the front that we know what we're talking about, what condition we're talking about. But like I said, we don't expect you to be medical experts at that. We're just asking for specific documents that will help us get the information that we need quickly and easily without having to bother you to upload 15 different documents 10 different times, trying the back and forth of trying to get one piece of information from you. This just helps us really do a good job of get that overview right from the start. So I've said this a million times, but it's important, and that's why I'm going to continue to repeat myself and say it again. Just because a connection is possible doesn't mean it's possible for every veteran. This is why the chart review is so vital in determining on a case-by-case basis what is meeting that at least as likely criteria that the VA needs. So just because we're able to do it doesn't mean that every veteran has the evidence to support that specific connection, because every case is different. Every medical condition is different. Every course the veteran takes throughout their life and treatment is different. And that can make all the difference in the world when it comes to service connection. So it is very important to look at the details of each case. The next piece of information we like to ask for are any denial letters. If you've claimed that condition before and you were denied for it, we like to see those denial letters because they're helpful in understanding the rationale the VA used to deny it. It can provide us hidden clues as to what the VA is looking for. What is the VA saying to you? What are they telling you they're denying it for? In a 10-page document, there's usually 1 to 2 paragraphs of vital information to help us understand why the connection was denied. And it's not always clear and standing out as to what that information is. There's usually a lot of regulation, a lot of jargon that isn't really important. So if you were filing for sleep apnea secondary to PTSD, but they talk about sleep apnea as a primary connection in their denial letter, it can get confusing. Oftentimes, they're putting that information in those denial letters, basically checking the box. They check to make sure that this isn't service connected directly. So here's the regulation related to that, even though that's not how you filed your claim. So there's a lot of information in there that's not useful when it comes to trying to figure out what the rationale is. And so we are skilled and trained to do that. So if you're uploading your denial letters for us, that gives us an insight into what the VA is looking for. If they're looking for additional medical records, additional objective evidence, we will be able to identify that and tell you this is the reason that you were denied. So a medical opinion letter is not going to help your case because a medical opinion letter is not objective evidence as the same as medical records. It is a professional letter that supports your claim and does carry a lot of weight when it comes to consideration for service connection, but it does not replace medical records. And so if the VA is asking you for medical records between 1992 and 1997, an opinion letter from us today is not going to be helpful if we were not the treating providers in 1992 and 1997. So we're not going to waste your time, energy, and money and having you purchase a document that's not going to be helpful. So this way we can identify that and inform you of that. And that can lead you down the path of breaking into some of those old boxes that you might have stored up or old military stuff to try to seek out the information the VA is looking for or some sort of evidence the VA is looking for. Oftentimes we're finding the denial letters, though, are a misunderstanding or a miscommunication on how the connection is and how it relates to you. I feel that that's pretty common because medical providers are trained to treat you, to treat or resolve your ailments. Research medicine is a different field, and its primary goal is to understand the details of the condition, any contributing factors, in a way that may lead them to treatments to help those treating providers. So they're two separate things, and one group doesn't always know, like the treating providers don't always know everything that's going on in the research field. And so usually there's a gap from when research is conducted to when it's implemented into practice. Some of the reason is for that is the providers, the treating providers don't want to test theories on you. They don't want to, you're not the guinea pig. So rather they want to know with confidence that what they're treating you with has been studied sufficiently, it's safe without significant adverse side effects to harm you, and making sure that they're making the right choice for you as a person. And so there's sometimes a gap. Now, due to that, discrepancy. There's some time between when that happens. And so oftentimes we're talking about in service connection, we're talking about theories that live in the research world. And so they're not commonly in active practicing medicine because it's not about treatment. It's about the connection on how they relate to each other. So unless it affects your treatment directly, your treating provider may not be up to date on all of those research studies. Think about it. There are thousands of articles published in journals all around the world every given month. You can't have every medical provider up to speed on every medical condition, every connection, and everything that research is happening. So your specialist might know a little bit more than the general practitioner, but they still may not be tracking all of the details of all of the research that's going on there, especially when it comes to relating it to service connection. So this is why we're experts at what we do here at Telemedica. We're trained treating providers who specialize in looking at those conditions in relation to service connection and incorporating all of that research, knowing that there may be research out there and seeking that out. Your treating provider is busy treating patients. They have a clinic schedule. They're full all day long. They have 30 minutes between patients, sometimes 15, and they don't have the time during their workday to spend hours and days researching one particular item that you may be asking them to write a letter about. And I get that. But they're also not going to spend all of their off time, family time doing that as well. So oftentimes, if they're not a specialist, you're not asking them for a specific item that they're really specialized in or they really are interested in, then you may not get all of the key information in your connection. This is why companies like Telemedica exist, and we have experts that do that. We scour the research, we look at all the possible ways for the connection, and we evaluate your records plus the combination of looking at those research articles to see where it connects. I mean, if we're talking headache conditions, for example, your neurologist is a headache specialist. However, they may not have a particular interest in your particular type of headache as one of their specialties that they keep up on all of the research. They keep up on all the practicing data, but they may not keep up on all of the research for every single condition for every patient that they treat. So this is why we are able to pull together a very comprehensive and supportive document for your claim. And remember, the goal is to meet the at least as likely. What that means is at least 50-50 that your connection exists for any particular veteran. So that's a lot of leeway, and there's a lot of research out there for us to go through to try to figure out if your connection matches up to being service connected. The largest piece of evidence that we ask you for are your medical records. I want to talk a little bit about this and also some hidden things that may help us figure out how to provide a more comprehensive and detailed letter. So medical records can be a double-edged sword for chart review purposes. There is such a thing as too little and too much. So uploading, for instance, only your sleep study as evidence of your sleep apnea is too little. Those follow-up visits can be helpful because we can track and see how you're progressing, how your treatment is going. And if your treatments are following a poorly controlled pattern and you're constantly needing readjusted, that's different than if you're well controlled on CPAP. It's also different if you're experiencing peaks and valleys. If your treatment is going up and down like a roller coaster, and it lines up with your mental health treatment being poorly controlled, we can correlate those two if we have access to those records. That's the sort of hidden things in medical records that can really be not as obvious to you, but that's something that we look for. We look for those patterns, those trends, things that give us that extra evidence, something that if it's not spelled out clearly in word form, that we're able to say, well, here, line this up. Your mental health records show you had flares of your depression and anxiety in these months. And during these months, your sleep apnea was really poorly controlled. Your follow-up visits really just match, everything lined up. So it helps us show that aggravation because by definition, aggravation for VA disability purposes is we have to show a time point of when things were great before this time point and things were not great after this time point, and it's related to that service connected condition. So that's a lot of work to do, especially if we don't have a lot of records to go off of. And if we don't have a lot of records, then we're making generalizations and we're relying a lot on that research, which can be helpful, but having as much objective evidence to support that connection is going to be better for your claim, and to allow that to be connected a lot quicker than maybe say someone who doesn't have as much evidence uploaded. Similarly, uploading a 1,000-page document that is not in PDF form or that is not searchable is not as helpful, because going page by page through that document is very tedious and time consuming. And if you're up against a deadline, it may take us a long time to get through that document to make sure that we understand your full picture completely. Another way is that we've seen people upload pictures of their records, as it may be convenient for you to pull out your phone, your smartphone, and snap some pictures and upload it from your phone. It is not the most effective way to get us information, because then we're also looking at everything page by page and trying to understand the full picture. So that is why I want to have some tips in order to expedite this process, things that may or may not be intuitive to help us with your chart review. So I recommend organizing your files in 2 different ways. You can organize them either by year, treatment year, or by condition. So if you get seen by your primary care doctor for 5 different things and you want us to evaluate those, organizing by year, here are my doctor's visits in 2019, 2020, 2021, will be helpful. Then we can track the progression of your condition easier rather than one big giant file. Similarly, if you're uploading your, say, neurology notes, to upload your neurology notes as a separate document is going to be helpful for us to be able to pinpoint, find what we're looking for, and revisit them if necessary. Same thing if we are not sure about the connection. If we're looking through saying, oh, we see evidence of something, but we're not 100% sure, we need to look for ENT records. Sleep apnea is a good one for that. If you're trying to claim your sleep apnea and a mental health condition and you've been seen by an ENT specialist, having those records separately labeled can be helpful, because we're going to be looking to say, is there an anatomical issue? Did they scope you? Is there anything going on in the throat that may be causing your sleep apnea or contributing to it more than your mental health condition? So it's not only used to support your claim, it's also used to rule out conditions, rule out other causes. Because if we can confidently say, this is likely the connection, because if you look at their mental health notes and their sleep apnea notes and you see the roller coaster of treatment correlates at the same time as their mental health flares, that's going to be supportive. But then you also can say they were also seen by an ENT specialist, which did not show any abnormalities in the anatomy of their throat, which rules out other conditions to be contributing to their sleep apnea. That is a very strong argument when it comes to filing that claim. And that's what we're looking for, those little hidden items in order to support or rule out other conditions. And so uploading proper medical records is really important in your claim, and it is worth taking the time to do that properly. Another thing that it could do is help you with filing your claim. You're then able to upload documents to the VA in a very organized way. It's going to help that claims processor. It's going to help that C&P examiner evaluate your case and not miss anything, and not glaze over it at the large amount of files that you're uploading. Uploading a large amount of files is not a problem if they're organized. If they're organized, it really can be helpful in your case to expedite your service connection. Another thing is we're looking at you as a whole. So uploading a comprehensive picture of your condition is helpful for the most accurate document. So if you have a primary care visit that you just recently had, even if it's not exactly talking about the condition we're trying to service connect, but it's your most current record, that may help us get a snapshot picture of your overall health. What other things that are not service connected do you have medically, and making sure those are not contributing more significantly to your requested condition. All of those things can be helpful to us. You'll also want to think outside of the box. Some hidden helpful items that you may not be thinking of are things like pictures. If you have pictures in service, I talked about this at the beginning of the broadcast. if you have a picture of yourself working in an environment such as a cramped area where you needed to lift heavy items, push heavy items, work in awkward positions, and you have some pictures from service in that, even though you don't have service treatment records from a doctor, that can help us explain why 3 years after service, you were diagnosed with a significantly severe back condition that you didn't have an injury for to explain. And for instance, we use that same theory with your post service. If you're post service, you went to school or you went to work in an office and you didn't do any heavy lifting or you didn't do any awkward position work, then it helps us really argue your case, and you can submit that as evidence to the VA to say, even though there aren't medical records, there is evidence of this condition being caused in service. And so you can do things like that with receipts. If you've got a receipt showing you bought over-the-counter antacids, that is sufficient with your personal statement of the symptoms you're having to be weighted similarly to what medical records would be. If you bought a knee brace, same thing. Even though you didn't get seen, but you bought a knee brace in 1997 and you didn't get your diagnosis till, I don't know, 2001, that's going to help close that gap. It's going to help us prove a timeline of things. So objective evidence can be in any form, and we look for all of those things. One piece of information that is helpful, but not as a standalone document, would be radiology notes. So images from the radiologist, so pictures of your x-ray, or only radiology notes. If you don't upload any medical records and you're only uploading radiology notes, that's not as helpful because a radiologist is not licensed to diagnose. They're licensed to read an image and do the best that they can to provide as much information to the treating provider to help them in the diagnosis and treatment of your condition. So the treating provider notes, whether it's orthopedics, primary care, whoever sent you for that image or study, we need to see their notes too. Because yes, it can be helpful to have those imaging study reports in, support, because your primary doctor may just list it as back pain. But if they're saying that, look, here, there's evidence of arthritis, then that combined, those two documents combined, can be used as showing that your back pain is most likely this arthritis that the radiologist is seeing. But as a standalone document, it's not as helpful. Same thing with lab tests. Uploading lab tests are not as effective. Prescriptions. There are a lot of prescribers who will write, because you have to have a diagnosis on a prescription. That's part of writing. That's part of the criteria of writing a prescription. But that may not be your specific diagnosis. They might give you omeprazole, diagnose you with, put it on their GERD, but your actual diagnosis is eosinophilic esophagitis. Two totally different letters from me if you were going that direction. So if I just had your prescription, I'm looking at it as GERD, but it's not. It's eosinophilic esophagitis, which is very different evidence that I would be using to support your claim. So having those treatment notes are very important. Now, when I talked about other hidden signs or symptoms that lead us to service connection, when we review your chart, we're keeping an eye out for anything that's documented that may lead us in a direction. So for instance, if you're connecting your sleep apnea to your mental health condition, but you've uploaded your current medical records and we see that your weight trend is, we're going to start looking as to why is your weight trending up? And we're going to be comparing that to your mental health notes. And if we see, oh, he's talking about overeating in response to his depression and drinking alcohol, we're thinking you're having excess calories. That weight may be contributing to it. And so if the weight is the responsible cause or a significant contributing factor to your sleep apnea, then we can use that if all of the records line up. So we're looking for key items in your records, even if you're not pointing us to that specific item. We'll look and see that and match up with what we're seeing in your records to say, yeah, this is how you're talking about your case. You think your mental health condition is contributing to your sleep apnea. I agree, because the evidence I find as a medical provider is X, Y, and Z. I don't expect you to point out that specific fact. I don't expect you to say, I'm looking to connect my sleep apnea secondary to my PTSD through weight gain as an intermediate step. That's a little bit more technical than you need to be. You just need to think that it's triggering. That's a big key word, trigger. What condition, what symptom, what anything is triggering your condition. That's what we're looking for from you. If you're telling us that your headaches are mostly at a specific time, or when you're mentally distressed, we're going to start looking into your records for more and more evidence. So what we're looking for from you are more symptoms, triggers, things that make it worse, not anything where medical term. We don't need you to tell us a connection. We just need you to tell us what condition do you have, what triggers it, and if you're thinking that it may be something service connected, we'll look for those clues and we'll tell you, yes, there's evidence of this, or no, there's not evidence of this because your records point to a different cause. And so that's the thing that we do with our chart reviews. That's what sets us apart, is that we're not just looking for the connection to move on. If there's helpful information to communicate to you about your service connection, the condition, or your claim, we're going to communicate that to you. We're going to tell you, hey, this is a weak case because you don't have enough records. That might prompt you to go back and look for more records, because we think that would be helpful in your case. You may not have known that. Or look for other sources of information like pictures or receipts, buddy statements, writing yourself a personal statement, looking at uploading mental health records, things that you might not have been talking about, dietitian notes, or anything that may help connect the condition or what we think is the mechanism causing your condition. If we tell you, hey, we think that this is more of the primary connection to your condition based on your records, that might set off a light bulb. Say, oh, I actually have support for that, and I actually have the information you might be looking for, or I may need to go a different direction because I didn't even realize that's how my condition may be connected to service. And I have all of those records. I just didn't upload them. So it may trigger you when we tell you it's a weak case, or we tell you they denied you because you need more objective evidence, or we're telling you that it looks like this is more of the reason for your connection. It's not really to deter you. It's to arm you with that knowledge so that you can help support your claim stronger, better, get more successful results quicker. All of those reasons is why we do our chart review the way we do it. And it looks like we're about out of time. So I was trying to keep this short, trying to keep it to about 30 minutes. So I hope you learned a little bit about medical evidence and chart reviews today, some hidden things that we may be looking for, and why we ask for the documents that we do. Join us next week when we talk about doctor's visits, how they can help your claim, and we'll go a little bit more into specifics about medical records in relation to doctor's visits, as to how to support your claim. So with that, y'all have a great afternoon, and I'll talk to you next week. See ya.